Hello and welcome. The title of the message today is There Are Many Dwellings. But let's begin by affirming our opening statement. There is only one presence and one power in my life and the universe, God. I invite you now just to take a deep breath with me and release, relaxing into this present moment, opening ourselves to divine wisdom and understanding so that we may digest the ideas that are presented. And so it is. So, there are many dwellings. You might have heard it as, in my Father's house, there are many mansions or many rooms. I'd like to go a little deeper into this statement from the Gospel according to John and explain how it's relevant to my personal, practical, spiritual journey. And so maybe you'll find that it is also useful to you. So let's begin by just reading from the Gospel according to John, from the Lamsa translation. That's Lamsa, George Lamsa, Lamsa. And I'll be reading from chapter 14 and starting at verse 1. Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God and believe in me also. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you with me, so that where I am, you may be also. You know where I am going, and you know the way. Thomas said to him, Our Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? And Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. So that's John 14, 1 through 6. Now let's look at that a little deeper. Okay? There's a lot that's said here, and I won't be able to talk about all of it in this short message. But I'd like to touch on some very important things on this Father's Day. Father's Day, a day that we remember the male caregivers in our life, whether they were our father or not. We remember them with gratitude. We remember them as God expressing through them in our life. And so we give thanks for the male caregivers in our life. So let's begin with verse 1, because I think this is the key to understanding the whole practical message that Jesus is speaking about. He says, let not your heart be troubled. Be still and know. Is that what he's saying? Let not your heart be troubled. Believe in God. Believe that there is this one presence and one power in whom we live and move and have our being. Allah, the self-existent, the only thing that exists, consciousness, the self-existent consciousness that is this entire universe. Understand this connection that we have always, that we can never get away from. That is the key to understanding this whole message. And then the very last clause, and believe in me also. Now that's not believing about Jesus. This is poor translation here. This is saying, have the same energetic trust that I have in my connection and your connection to this self-existent consciousness, this Allah, in whom we live and move and have our being. Follow the teachings that I have given you to realize this in your life. This isn't some statement of belief in the way I read it, in the way I see it. So the next verse now makes a lot more sense if we read, in my Father's house are many rooms. So where is this Father's house? Where is the house of this self-existent consciousness? Where does God live? Is it somewhere out there, someplace that we're not around, that's not? No. It's right here, among us and within us. This is where God lives. So what does it mean then to say that God's house has many rooms? It's often translated as mansions, but these are poor translations. The Aramaic root of this word that's translated as mansions or rooms has the connotation of a temporary dwelling. It's like a nomad's tent, much more than it is a palatial mansion that is so fancy and permanent. So what does this mean? This place where we live and move and have our being, this house of God that we're in right now, that we've always been in, has many rooms. Now, if I think about where am I making my connection to God? Why, it's within. I may see something that inspires me, a natural surrounding, a sunset, the love between a child and mother, between a child and father. But when I have that experience of this love, where do I have it? It's not out there. It's right here inside me. And it's not an accident that I touch my heart. Remember verse 1, let not your heart be troubled. So where is this place? Where are these rooms? These rooms are also inside of us. And there are many rooms. And not all of these rooms inside of us are helpful for our spiritual growth. In fact, when we enter a room that's full of anger within us, are we bringing ourselves closer to God? Are we bringing ourselves closer to God when we enter a room full of joy? Things to ponder, things to digest. In verse 3, Jesus says, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to me, so that where I am you may also be. In the Near Eastern sense, in the Aramaic sense, in the sense of the people, the culture that Jesus is coming from, the future is in front of us. I'm sorry. That's our culture. In the Aramaic culture, the future is behind us. And the past is somehow ahead of us. Now, how can this be? If Jesus is in the past and is ahead of us, he has left a path. His teaching, the example of his life, leaves a trail in the ground. A trail in spirit. Think about when a jet plane flies over a clear blue sky and leaves that white trace behind. And I've got a joke that helps to illustrate this too. If you want to follow Will Smith in the snow, just look for the Fresh Prince. You see, this trace of the past is ahead of us. We can follow this trace, these fresh prints that are left for us by Jesus. And he's going to explain this to us because Thomas is a little bit, he doesn't quite get it. He doesn't quite understand. And so he wants clarification. If there's all of these rooms and some of them aren't going to be helpful to me, how am I going to know which ones are this pathway that you're leading us to by your trail that you are leaving behind, Jesus? That I come again because this trail doesn't leave us. You know where I'm going and you know the way. I've been teaching this to you all along. Now you got to remember this is in chapter 14. Jesus is just about to go to the cross. So he's reinforcing these ideas in the mind of his students. He's been telling us all along. And Thomas asks him, Lord, we do not know where you're going. How can we know the way? And then Jesus says to him, I am the way. This that's translated as I am in Aramaic is Ina na. If Jesus was only saying I, he would just say Ina. But he doesn't. He says Ina na. I. What does this mean? We've talked about it a little bit before. When we connect our small self to our big self, our napsha, our human experience of life, with our ruah, the holy breath, that divine that is in us, that image of God that is moving through us constantly, this holy breath. This holy breath knows the way, sees that pathway of energy that's left behind for us to follow. That is the way. That's what he says. Connecting our little self to our greater self is the way. It's also the truth. It's where we find our guidance for how to live our life. How to live our life as napsha. It's from connecting that same small s self to the big capital S self. And he also says, I am the life. This connection gives us the energy that we need to continue on this path of realizing our full ripeness as a human being. I was asked why I wear this T around my neck. It is Tau in the Hebrew alphabet. It is the final letter, like the Omega in the Greek alphabet, like Z in our alphabet, and it represents our full ripeness. The end is the beginning. As spirit, And so we make this connection of our self with a small s to ourself with a big S. And before I go, I'd like to share with you how it is that we can make this connection in our life. We connect our self, which is largely centered in our head, with our self that is centered in our heart and indeed our entire body. We make this heart connection. Do not let your heart be troubled. That's what Jesus tells us at the very beginning of this guidance. How can we do this? We had a birthday dinner yesterday. Our family gathered together, and several of the people that normally come were not able to make it. So the seating arrangement was different. And I was blessed to have a young mother directly in front of me, and sitting right next to her was her small child. This little girl was 11 months old, and she was looking around at the people, all of these different faces. And I was watching her. As I was participating in the conversation, I gave a lot of my attention to this 11-month-old baby. And I was touched. I made that heart connection in a moment when I saw little baby girl looking at her mother. The expression on her face as she gazed at her mother's face touched me in a way where I could feel that love connection. I could feel this unconditional love that this baby had and was expressing in that gaze for her mother. And in that moment, I know that my napsha was connected to my ruah, and I was feeling that expansive love that is my personal connection to God. And so, if you would like to make that connection right now, I invite you to take a deep breath with me. Release that breath and bring to mind a time in your life where you felt joy or a deep love, like I felt in that moment of expression as I saw this child gazing into its mother's face. Feel the way that feels in your body. Breathe into that feeling in your heart. Perhaps another deep breath. Aware of this feeling, of this presence. And you have made the connection that is I. This I am presence is now active. You have the energy of life. You have the truth, the guidance from Spirit, and the way is open to you when we make that connection of our napsha self with our ruha expansive self. I'd like to close with the prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. I am light. The love of God enfolds us. I am love. The power of God protects us. I am power. The presence of God watches over us. I am presence. Wherever I am, God is. Thank you.